I come from the music industry, okay? You know what? PowerPoint is the equivalent of performing playback. So I'm going to take a blackboard and chalk and be really old school. And I'm really going to go deep today. If we take all the dreams of every one of us, of all the 7 billion people on this planet, if we take all the dreams and fantasies that we have, all the hopes and visions we may have, and we project them all into one tiny spot, what would be the name of that spot? Unfortunately, we only have one word for it, and it's a word that, at least here in Scandinavia, the vast majority of people are terribly uncomfortable with. But it's a 3-letter word. It's this word. Yeah, I heard it. I heard in the audience, you're really uncomfortable now. Because the word God is either a word that we associate with fanatics, Muslim, Christian fundamentalists, and they terrify us. Or, like the vast majority of us, especially in Scandinavia, the most atheistic culture that ever existed in human history, it's just a word that leaves us terribly uncomfortable. We think of an old man looking a bit like Alexander Bard, sitting on top of a cloud, looking over us, and having nothing better to do than to watch us play all day long. Terribly bored. Can you imagine God's sex life? Masturbation, masturbation, masturbation. There's nothing else to do. At least it gets to look into each one of our bedrooms, but that's about it. No, it must be terrible to be God. There can be no such God. Obviously, there can't be. But this is the problem. The fact is that God is still the only word we have for our dreams. And it brings me to something that terrifies me with our age. Besides the fact that we're all gone megalomaniacs. We are not racists anymore. We're not homophobes, except for Vladimir Putin. But we have generationism. Generationism is a big problem because we think we're much better than all previous generations. We're much smarter than they are. No, we're not. We actually use less of our brains now than people did 5,000 years ago. We trust our machines too much, if anything. No, generationism is a problem. That's true. Michel Foucault taught me, one of the great thinkers of the 20th century, that every age overrates its own intelligence. And so do we. But what makes our age distinct in a terrifying way is that we currently live in the first age ever where we do not believe in utopia. This is not my idea. This comes from Slavoj Žižek. And I completely agree with Slavoj. That is really, really dangerous. Because utopia is another word for God. Utopia is our dreams. Utopia is the idea that the world could be different from what it is now, and it could be much better and more fair. And what scares me is not only the fact that if we remove utopia from our worldview, we all become completely cynical. So we live in a hyper-cynical age. We're all cynical now. No, what really scares me is the fact that utopia is a myth. No, wait a second. Utopia, the myth. The real myth is that we can live without utopia. That scares the shit out of me. And I've dug into this, working on my 4th book at the moment. I'm not in a sales pitch here. My books are non-profit. But looking at this and going to myself and discovering that the one thing I've suffered from all my life, having done all those things you're supposed to do. Yeah, I was a cool kid already when I was a teenager. I slept around. I took drugs. I did all those things. I was one of those guys you wanted to be. Sure. But I suffered from religion envy. I always thought those Orthodox priests and those nuns and those monks looked really, really cool. And I really wanted to be one of them. But since I didn't share their beliefs, that was impossible for me. So I believed that until I was like 50 years old, say 2 years ago. Then I went to Burning Man. How many of you have been to Burning Man? Okay, Americans regard it like it's a big rave for old hippies or something like that. They haven't understood how profound it is. That's exactly why Burning Man is now being copied around the world. And I recommend you to go to one of the local burns rather than the real thing. They're better. They're less cynical. But I went to Burning Man, and I was there with a neuroscientist, and he was using me as his guinea pig. I don't need to tell you more than that, do I? I wasn't sober for those 8 days. No, of course not. And I was in this couch somewhere, and I was being put on these drugs, giving me a female orgasm for 6 hours. And just to make sure I wouldn't die, my neuroscientist friend had placed this naked Canadian actress next to me. Yeah, all those heterosexual men in this audience right now, you're going to faint. I mean, a gorgeous woman walking naked in high heels, taking cocaine all night long. And she was sitting next to me, looking at me, just making sure I wouldn't die, noticing that I was having a female orgasm in a male body. And she was sitting there, and all of a sudden she goes, "You know what? Burning Man is Mecca." Burning Man is Mecca. Yeah, we're doing our Hajj. We are. We're 60,000 people in the desert of northern Nevada, and we're really practicing a religion, even with the burning of the man on Saturday night. And I walked around the rest of the week talking to people, being slightly more sober than I was the first night, and asking them, so what if this is a religion? And they go, yeah, it probably is a religion. So you mean there's no theory to this religion? No, there isn't. We don't have a Bible. No, we don't. No Quran, no. But it really is a religion for atheists. I mean, they're not even New Age at Burning Man, you know? There's no crystal healing going on, anything like that. If there is, it's ironic. And I was beginning to think, maybe we're just making a big mistake. Maybe we threw the baby out with the bathwater and made a terrible mistake. And then I read this book, Après Finitude, by a young French philosopher. He's about my age. In the world of philosophy, you're young when you're 52. Immanuel Kant was 55 when he made his debut. So I read this book, Après Finitude, by Quentin Melassu, a young French philosopher. He totally outrageous guy, way more than me. And he said, he started the book by saying, God is a concept far too important to leave to the religious. And religion envious me finally woke up after 50 years and realized, maybe this is my chance. I got to dig deeper into this. And I began to realize that the mistake is not to have dreams. And the mistake is not the concept God. The mistake is just we put God in the wrong place. Who came up with the stupid idea that God was before us? Oh, God the creator. No, but the universe doesn't need a creator. We know that from physics. And I love physics. I even do physics when, I got my day off. When everybody else is doing their hangover, I do quantum physics maths. That's my brain. Blame it on it. But anyway, I love physics, and I suddenly realized Quentin is right. God is a concept far too important. We live in an age without utopia, which is incredibly dangerous. We need to get hold of a new utopia, otherwise we cannot save the planet. So what did Quentin do? Quentin said the mistake we made all along is that put God in the past. We should put God in the future. We should create God. Now that's a very different story. All of a sudden the concept of God becomes very interesting. Don't you agree? Feels slightly less uncomfortable now? You love storytelling, don't you? And you love to create things. And what could be a bigger, better thing to create than create God? There you go. So I went through the history of philosophy, and I discovered this genius guy called Baruch Spinoza. He lived in the 17th century. He was a genius. And he just said, the problem with all these people talking about religion is that they're arguing about something that's absolutely obvious, God. So in what way is God obvious? God and the universe are the same thing. Why would God create something separate from himself? The universe has created itself, then the universe is God, period. So we have the universe as God, and that's called pantheos in Greek. And finally, I realized I'm religious. I've got a religion. I'm a pantheist. I believe in God because I believe the universe is God. And the universe is this amazing thing. Just look at physics, what's happened in physics over the last 100 years. Physics, by the way, is just another word for playing hide and seek with God. Okay? And what's happened in physics over the last 20 years? There are no things anymore in physics. It's just fields and relations and probabilities. And thinking about it, we are nothing but fields and relations and probabilities. I don't believe there are such things as human beings anymore. I just think there are human relations. And I've stopped behaving as if I exist. I start living my life as if there are only relations between bodies. That's all there is. But wait a second, why stop at one God? We can have more gods. Now when we're at it, are there any more gods we could actually believe in? Yeah. We can do like this. What will be the opposite of pantheos? Oh, a god for atheists. Atheos. The God who does not exist. You know what? That's you. Your I is nothing. Your I is a void. That is Jacques Lacan, and that is psychoanalysis, the biggest revolution of the 20th century. If you make a list of your attributes, of what you are, and say you maybe listed 60 different things, there's always a 61st thing there. And if you list 125 things, there's always a 126th thing there. Because somehow, every word you use still escapes who you really are. Lacan's great insight was that the I in your subjective experience is a void. And life is trying to fill this void. And if it would be filled, you would kill yourself. But you still believe you have to fill it up. So you wake up every morning, and the whole day is just trying to fill that void with some kind of a substance. But the substance always escapes you. By the way, this is exactly what love is. Slavoj Žižek once wrote that the intelligent woman question to a man is to ask the man, "Darling, why do you love me?" If he can reply to that question, "Oh, I love your breasts," or something like that, your lips, your eyes, then he doesn't love you. But if the man says, "Darling, what a strange question. I have absolutely no idea why I love you. I just love you," then he loves you. Because what he loves in you is the void. Atheos. That which does not exist. There is no such thing in physics. There is no empty space in physics, because even space itself has substance. It's full of activity. There is no void in physics. So it's not pantheos. Atheos is only in our minds. The void can only exist in our mind. But you know what? It's the most productive thing that ever existed. Just look at yourself and your hyperactivity. So it's a god. We have two gods that we atheists can believe in. We can now start a religion. Why stop at two? Why not go for three? Entheos. I must admit the name came before the god, because I love entheogens. I have to admit that, okay? Sweet, sweet Swedish police, do not arrest me for admitting to taking drugs. But anyway, entheogens, entheos. What is entheos? Entheos is another name for difference. Because the really strange thing is not that there is something rather than nothing, as Heidegger said. It's not that there is a universe. That's not really strange. The really strange thing is that there is difference. That there can be two different things. That you and the neighbor sitting next to you can be two different people in two different bodies. The world is full of difference. And difference, the fact that difference exists, also means that the world cannot be deterministic. Because if reality really was deterministic, there would be no difference to begin with. But the one, the universe, divides itself into differences all the time. The differences of intensity, the differences of shape, the differences of energy levels. But the most important thing when it comes to difference is the one thing that really makes difference distinctive is time. The strangest thing ever. The one thing that physics will really dig into in this century is time, because it's so weird. Einstein thought time could, go back and forth. So he created what I would call a Platonistic worldview, full of mathematics, where he described absolutely everything in a way that it doesn't really matter if you go forward or backward, we can do both in physics. No, you cannot, Mr. Einstein. Unfortunately, the strange thing is that time is just there, and it has an arrow, and it goes in a certain direction, and it won't go backwards. There will never be any time machines, and it's a God who's made sure that will never happen. He's called Entheos. Now we have 3 gods, and I have 2.5 minutes left. And you know what? Why not go for 4 while we're at it? Let's go to Greek, the Greek language. As you can see, I've used Greek to construct these 3 divinities. Let's call them divinities just to be a bit diplomatic, okay? What would be the 4th one? What would be the summary of the other 3? Think of the other 3 as a triangle where you want a top that unifies them into a pyramid. Wouldn't that be wonderful to have a religion that has the pyramid as a symbol without being New Age? What would that be? Wait a second. What about our minds? What are they doing right now? Our minds are constructing divinities. We're projecting these divinities onto the world, just like we're projecting ourselves onto the world. I'm projecting me onto me. I know there is no I in there, but still I have to behave as if there is one. So do you. You know perfectly well that you don't exist. You know that. And still you behave as if you exist. And your friends behave as if you exist. That's what's called metaphysics. You know, it's the same thing as I have a $100 bill here, so what is it worth? It's worth $100. Actually, it isn't. It's worth about 3 cents because it's the cost of making a $100 bill. But we're all behaving as if it's worth $100 because we all believe everybody else is so stupid that we behave as if it's worth $100. It's the same thing with our subjectivity. I know I don't exist, but I behave as if I exist, and everybody will treat me as if I exist. It's called metaphysics, and it's a wonderful thing. So why don't we do metaphysics here? Why don't we take the liberty to create a 4th God? And I just said his name, the created God. That in Greek would be Syntheos. Not a creating God. We don't need a creating God. We have pantheos and we have atheos already if we need that. We have difference, the beauty of difference, the difference between you and me, which makes our communication between the 2 of us a beautiful process because we look at the world differently. And by telling each other stories, we can fall in love with each other. But Syntheos is the God that we create. Now, what would that be? What kind of God would you create if you had liberty to create God? You would connect all 7 billion people on the planet and declare that together these 7 billion people are God. And we're doing it right now. And it's called